Welcome to the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast Spotlight, where we revisit take-home messages and shine a light on previous FRW podcasts in 10 minutes or less. I'm Lex, AZ's right and left-hand woman, and I churn out these mini episodes for her. Let's go.
Are those benefits shown to be kind of across the board, or are there typical conditions where creatine improves cognition?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a limited number of studies in this kind of specific area. So it's not as clear as what's happening at the muscle level. We also know that it's a little bit more challenging to get creatine into your brain compared to in your muscles. And so your muscles actually store about 95% of your body's creatine, but there is evidence to show that if you supplement with creatine, you can get it into your brain. And so the question was, is there certain situations or things like that? We recently did a systematic review and meta-analysis and showed that just in healthy individuals that you can improve memory when taking creatine. So this was pretty cool. And this was just at rest, or most of the studies were just kind of a resting situation. There were a few studies that tried to stress the brain. And so there's different situations or different ways that we stress the brain in science. One is sleep deprivation, and this probably happens quite a bit in firefighters.
It does.
Stress or mental fatigue is another way that you can stress your brain. And then the other way is hypoxia, which is just a low amount of oxygen. So these are three ways in science that we've stressed the brain. And creatine has had a positive effect on cognitive function in all those situations.
Sleep deprivation, stress, and hypoxia. That pretty much sounds like our job description. It sounded a lot prettier when I applied for the job, but that pretty much summarizes it. And so, Scott, you said it's harder to get creatine into the brain than in the muscles. The muscles are the greedy bastards. They're taking 95% of it. What are sort of the techniques or the workarounds, or is it just keep taking the creatine? How do you get the creatine to the noggin?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I'm not sure the best technique to get creatine into your noggin. So there's... At the muscle level, and at the brain, there's creatine transporters, but there's fewer of them at the brain level. And so it's difficult to get creatine across that blood-brain barrier. There has been some studies looking at alternative forms of creatine to try to get some of the precursors across the blood-brain barrier. And there's one study that showed that was an effective way to do that. Perhaps combining creatine with carbohydrates or protein can help get more creatine across some tissues. But at the brain level, we're actually not too sure kind of the best way or the best dose to get creatine into the brain. So we think that a higher dose for longer periods of time may be required, but that research hasn't been done yet.
More to come. I like that. As you were talking, I was thinking about two things. The first one is the dosage on the creatine. So we said 5 grams per day, every day without fail, was pretty good. But in the research that was done in the bones, was it showing a higher dosage required, or was it the same?
Yeah, so again, it's a little bit inconclusive right now for bone, but when we look at the literature, it actually looks like a slightly higher dose of creatine is required to get those bone benefits. So all the studies that have shown a benefit of combining creatine with resistance training and shown a positive effect on the bones, they actually use a relative dosing of creatine. So that's relative to your body weight. So they use 0.1 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. So it's slightly higher than that 5-gram dosing. So if you're 70 kilograms, then you would take 7 grams of creatine per day. So slightly higher than 5 grams. And those were the studies that have shown to have a positive effect on those bone adaptations.
That is amazing. You also mentioned alternative forms of creatine. And I know when you go to your local GNC, you see a whole menagerie of different types of creatine that claim to be new, better, more efficiently absorbed. Is it true?
No, no. The answer is definitely that is not true. So creatine monohydrate is it's nearly all absorbed. So even if you can improve absorption into your blood, it would be such a small level that it wouldn't have any significant effect at the muscle level or any other tissue level. And creatine monohydrate is the most researched as well. So if you look up any creatine study, they probably use creatine monohydrate. So we know that it's a very effective supplement. And then it's also the cheapest form of creatine as well. So I recommend getting just the creatine powder and mixing that with water or, your protein drink or something like that. And that's how you should take creatine to get kind of the best benefits. And that's what most of the research has been conducted on.
And I heard Eric Trexler say one time from a former student of Abby Smith Ryan's in her lab saying that creatine, all the other forms of creatine are just more expensive and they do the same thing. So as firefighters, we are very, I won't say cheap, we are very frugal with our funds. So why would we ever spend more than we had to? So go for the creatine monohydrate. Scott, are there any downfalls? I'm thinking about dosing. So we're bumping up the dose a little bit to 0.01 grams per kilogram, potentially. So for me, that would look more like 7 grams a day than 5 grams. And I have been doing that with absolutely no issues whatsoever. But do you know, are there people that have issues with higher dosing, especially during that loading phase? Does anyone have issues with that?
Yeah, so there's been some research looking at some of the adverse effects of creatine, and some people get a little bit of like nausea or GI distress, and it seems to be associated with that loading phase. So if you want to avoid that, then just take a lower dose of creatine. It might take a little bit longer, as I mentioned, to saturate your muscles, but you're still going to get the muscle benefits, and and you're going to avoid any of those adverse effects. So any of the adverse effects associated with creatine are fairly minor. Like your stomach just might feel a little bit grumbly, but it's not doing any damage to your kidneys or your liver, which is often said in the media. That's completely untrue. So creatine is one of the safest supplements that you can possibly take.
And once my muscles are loaded, I've been taking my 5 or 7 grams per day for a month, a 2 month, 3 month, whatever. Once they're all loaded up, and I go on a vacation and I forget my creatine supplement and I'm freaking out. Am I losing all of my creatine the first day of vacation, or how does that work, Scott?
You're basically going to deflate and lose all your gains instantly.
Oh, God, I knew it.
No, so creatine is, it actually, once your muscles are saturated, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for it to return back down to baseline. So if you miss a day of creatine or a couple days or even a week, it's definitely not going to have a big deal on your gains or your muscle performance. So if you forget to take it on a vacation, that's absolutely no problem at all.